All right, everybody, welcome to Stay Paid. We have a packed studio today. We have a return guest that we're going to introduce in a little bit.
But we got something amazing for you today.
Got something amazing to share with everybody. We have been reading listener reviews on the podcast lately. And I got a notification in my email that we've also been asking for more reviews, so thank you very much. I got a notification in my email that we had a new review, and I forwarded it to the team. And I was excited because I saw that it started off, it will positively change your life and business if you take action. And I just saw the first couple of lines, 5 stars, and I thought, man, that's a very nice review. And then I clicked on it, and this thing
would not fit on Twitter.
It's like a freaking post, man.
Yeah.
I don't know who Pete8283 is.
But whoever you are,
please let us know who you are, because this was an amazing review. It starts off, I'm not going to read the whole thing because I couldn't get to all of it, but head on over to iTunes, check out the latest reviews on there. You'll find it there. While you're there, you might as well click that 5th star.
Yes.
And leave your own review.
Yes.
And get it read here right on the podcast.
But we will take any review.
We'll take anything.
Both negative and positive.
We want feedback.
We want positive, but yes, we appreciate feedback.
Feedback is helpful.
Yes.
The Stay Paid podcast must be the best podcast of its kind. It is my belief that we must strive to grow and become better in our field day in and day out, no matter how much we believe we know or experience we have. Wait a minute.
You can
Wait
read.
A minute, Pete. We never know or have enough. All right, so no matter how much we believe or experience, we may never have enough. I spent a major part of my career as a financial advisor and now a real estate advisor. The Stay Paid podcast combines the best and most talented minds in both fields. It could build a successful career simply by taking action on the wealth of information the guests, like we have today, and hosts of the podcast provide. Seriously, listen to this podcast with pen and paper in hand. Every episode will provide you at a minimum one idea that you can immediately implement and see results. I sure have. He even postscripts this thing saying, I promise I am not being paid for these remarks. I am just very grateful to have found ReminderMedia and the Stay Paid podcast.
But you know why he's probably saying that is because we did say the 100th 5-star review we'll give $100 to. That's probably against marketing compliance.
And we still haven't figured out how we're going to actually figure that out. You're going to have to send us a screenshot or a recording of you being the 100th person.
Yeah, you being the 100th person.
We're going to be able to find that out.
$100 Visa card coming your way.
Visa card. Well, our guest today is a return guest to Stay Paid. His name is David DeCelle. Last time he was over Skype or Blue Jeans or whatever we used. Today he's actually in the podcast. He flew down
to see us
from Boston just for this podcast.
26-hour trip. That's it. Just in and out.
He's been up since 2 a.m. It is currently 4:30 p.m. So we said this podcast is going to get hype. We're going to get a little crazy. We're a little sleep deprived. Luke's been drinking all day. Anyway, the last time that David was here was episode 41, where we learned about his journey and how he founded the Financial Advisors Alliance, a coaching and branding firm for advisors by advisors. So we're not excited to have David here to catch up to find out what he's been up to in the last year, but also we're going to go a little bit deeper into the strategies and tactics of how to build relationships with people in your network. David, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you in person.
Yes, man,
both of you.
I was telling David before the podcast, guys, that this is the power of social media. David and I have never met in person.
I don't remember how we initially met, by the way.
I think Andrew Sachs.
It was
I
LinkedIn
think LinkedIn. Yeah.
So Andrew Sachs is this guy is like one of the greatest networkers I've ever met in my life. Everywhere I travel, he knows somebody, he has a childhood
Part-time
friend.
photographer.
Yes, part-time photographer. He takes a blurry photo on his Instagram. You got to follow this guy. It's like
I don't know how he takes them so blurry.
I don't know how you take pictures so bad. Yeah, it's just amazing that he's able to do this. But anyways, never met in person, but literally you show up here and I feel like we have known each other forever and have met and hung out. And the reason why is because David and I see each other all the time on social media. I'm following his stuff. He's following mine. We comment to each other. We DM, all that good stuff. We've obviously done the podcast before. And it just shows you the power of social media and how it can be effective in helping you build relationships. Because even in our own lives, here you are flying down. We're going to grab dinner tonight and all that good stuff. And it all started from LinkedIn. Has transitioned now to where you're actually at our office. You're seeing what we have here. So it's just amazing. I just want to point that out to the audience. So Let's talk about kind of where your journey is now. So we have a lot of new listeners. So give people a little bit of, how you got into coaching, where you came from, and then take us up to where you're at today, what's really changed with you. And then let's dive right into relationships, because I want to talk about it because I know you've had a ton of success over the past couple of years with really focusing on relationships. And so I want to pick your brain about the details that maybe some of the financial advisors listening to us or real estate agents can take away from it. But give us kind of your 30,000 foot lead up to how you got
backstory.
Here. Yeah.
So to be real quick about it, started as a financial advisor back in 2011. I was with my firm for 7 years.
The firm was?
Northwestern Mutual.
Okay.
So very much financial planning focus, which was insurance focused the first handful of years, and transitioned over to more of a financial planning focus beyond that. 5 of those years I ran our new advisor development program, which was basically our internship, and then anyone who converted full-time was on the team as well.
Okay.
And Northwestern has about 350 offices. I took the program over. If you're watching this on YouTube, got finger quotes up. I was a 22-year-old leader, which basically means I didn't know what I was doing at all. Was like thrown into the mix and was like, hey, figure it out.
Isn't that amazing about leadership? Not to cut you up, but the more I go on this journey, oh man, it is so embarrassing to look back and go,
but it's also...
You see some of the photos, you see some of the videos, you go, oh gosh. I'm glad I was confident enough to not know I was terrible.
Right,
I think that about music too. It's like, I'm glad I was confident to not know I was terrible because it allowed you to keep going.
Yeah, you didn't analyze it, you did.
Yeah, you just did it. You just did it.
But when you look back, you realize it's all part of your story.
It is,
right?
It's
and
all
it makes
part of the journey.
Up and up that much better. So didn't know what we were doing. And actually, Andrew asked this to me earlier. He was like, what was the change? Because over the subsequent 4-year period, brought it up to the #1 performing unit in the country from 300th out of 350s.
Yeah,
ran it into the ground and then brought it back up. And he said, what was the difference? So the mission of that program was to identify the future leaders of our firm and to make sure, of course, that they're better off having met us than having not met us. But there's a small subtlety there. So what I found is that if I didn't think, or if an intern or a full-time advisor didn't plan to stay there for a while, I just wrote them off because why would I spend my time with them, right?
Spend less time with the underperformers.
Yep, that was my mindset. And it was all about sales language and product placement and sales metrics, right? Was sort of like the vibe of it.
Sure.
So in year 2, when I realized, well, that didn't work, simply switched the mission around, and it became the mission of this program is to make sure that you're better off having met us than having not met us.
That's awesome.
And then to identify the future leaders of our firm. But the mission is one thing, but you have to back that up with your action. So on Monday, rather than language role play, it was all about personal development. Because I wanted to make sure that they were better off having come into the program than having not come into the program. And when I would find out that this wasn't going to be a long-term play for them, I didn't write them off. I helped them find another job. Right? I helped them develop their skill set in other areas. I asked them what it is that they wanted to do. Right? And I maintained those relationships. And those relationships, which we'll allude to in a little bit, are, I should say, still paying dividends today, even though they paid 0 dividends then because they didn't produce anything, which is why they wanted to leave, right? So it was just that quick shift in mission. So that was a total of 7 years, 5 years running that program.
So you've maintained, maybe we'll get into this later, but these people that didn't make it, you've met them again later.
Oh yeah, they're my boys and girls. They're like just like we do, slide in each other's DMs and hit each other up, and build and maintain and deepen the relationship. And you can, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but you can add value from afar without exchanging your time to do so. Right? You can maintain your relevance from afar and not exchange your time to do so. And so back in April of 2018 is when I started my company now, the Financial Advisors Alliance, which was basically like, hey, I kind of found my passion and I wanted to do this full time, and I didn't want to be limited to one firm that I could impact, right? Sure. That being Northwestern. So I started the company with essentially no money. I was doing it from 7 to 7 and Ubering from 8 to 12 and digging holes on the weekends and just kind of making this work.
I didn't know you were digging holes on the weekends. That's awesome, dude.
Oh,
That is awesome.
It was $750 for a hole, but I still digging holes.
Dude, I tell man, sweep the floors if it pays
But
enough.
then you have friends, right? That you know they have financial goals and they're free on weekends. So hey, I'll give you $350 to dig a hole.
Yeah.
And then I make my $400.
Dude,
so I was like,
That's like the
is
kids
a
who would
businessman
get other
right
people
there.
to
That's
shovel
a
driveways.
businessman.
Yeah.
I get paid $750. Hey, I'll pay you. My nephew's 16 years old.
it was my
$350.
cousin and some friends who were.
What holes were you digging?
It was for a telecommunications company. They were doing, some gas lines as like a backup generator at the cell phone towers, and they just pay stupid money for that work.
So you running equipment? You're like running
Oh, no,
machines,
shovel
or you're
and
shoveling
rakes.
holes? Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
So
Oh,
how'd
yeah.
you get your first clients? Like, you obviously were trying to get the coaching thing off the ground.
Yeah, so I made a very, very specific decision where at Northwestern I was making 50, 60, 70 phone calls a day.
Yep.
Some days 10, 20, or 30. and I believed in the power of social media for business development purposes. And because I was willing to, eat crap on the off hours with the two things that I just shared, I had some financial run room, to not have like a pressured sales. Like I wanted people to buy, I didn't want to sell. So I literally, from the hours of like 4 or 5 in the morning for another hour or two, I would send out hundreds of LinkedIn connection requests to financial advisors until LinkedIn was like, hey, we're gonna put a pause on your account for a little bit. And what I would
go dig some more holes?
Yep, and go dig some more. I was like, oh, okay, I got a few days now. And then what I would do is I would invite them to a Facebook group
Okay.
where I would post on a daily basis something of value. There was no selling at all, just something of value. So like we had things like Marketing Mondays and Tactical Tuesdays and Weekly Wednesday Q&A and Impact Thursday and Masterclass Friday, Strategic Saturdays, and Sunday updates, right? So I could keep them posted of what we're working on. Since then, we've strayed away from that and we just do daily posts that aren't necessarily branded.
Okay.
But it was all about delivering value, and people were super appreciative of that. And I built up a lot of relationship capital. And what would happen was what I found is that I would connect with someone on LinkedIn because it was extremely easy to type in financial advisor and get a list of them.
Sure.
And once they would connect, I then nurtured them through my content. And as you guys both see, just like you guys, share a lot of content. And it's in multiple different forms, so pictures with long tail captions and videos and articles or blogs, whatever you want to call them, so that you could appeal to different people's learning styles. And then I would find them on Facebook. I would find them on Instagram because that accomplished a couple different things. Number one is it allowed me to become omnipresent. If they logged on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram,
everywhere.
I was there.
Yeah.
And that's the key to marketing these days.
Yep, you got to be omnipresent because
top of mind.
the result of that is it increases your relevance and it brings people through the trust curve that much faster. And specifically with video, because, and you both know this, but specifically with video, you're giving people an opportunity to get to know, like, and trust you from afar because they're seeing your face, they're hearing your voice, they're getting a feel for your mannerisms, they understand that you're a real person, and they can tell whether or not you're being genuine or not. And as long as you're delivering value, and then you go in for an ask where it's, hey, we've been connected for some time, but we haven't had a chance to actually connect. It kind of defeats the purpose of LinkedIn, if you ask me.
Right.
Why don't we hop on a quick intro call? Would love to hear about your initiatives rounding
Well,
out
you're
this
really
year.
all about it, video. I mean, even when sending over ideas for the podcast, you send over a Loom video instead of what most people do.
Most people
a
just
message,
shoot
an
When I
email.
get first of all, I'm lazy and it's way easier than typing an
Don't feel
email.
like typing.
I'm not
An
kidding.
honest
I get
man
that.
as well.
I'm not
Great
kidding.
businessman, honest.
And what it accomplishes is what it just did when we met.
Right.
We hugged.
Right.
We didn't shake hands. We hugged. And it gives people the opportunity to get to know, like, and trust you from afar. And what I find is I establish the initial connection a lot of times on LinkedIn, but because I'm friends with them on other platforms, it gives me more opportunities to engage with them. People tend to be more active with their posting on stories or actual posts on Facebook and Instagram. We can find similarities, whether it be sports teams or interests, locations, whatever.
Yep.
And you start off with a toss them a like here and there. You comment on something, you find an article that you think is relevant, and you send it to them. Right? There's times where I've sent you relevant stuff where I'm like, hey, you really like this,
Yep.
or you post something, I'm like, dude, fire post, and here we are in
Sometimes I do
person.
2 fire emojis.
2 fire.
Fire, fire.
That means it's really, really good. But that's how I started off. Was I gave myself enough financial run room through the other stuff that I mentioned, so I could get people to buy David and the FAA, the Financial Advisors Alliance, as opposed to me having to go and sell. Basically, social media and content distribution allowed me to prove myself and to prove that like I know my stuff, and then people are attracted to that over time.
Yep. No, I think you are, I want to point out to the audience, there is a key sales principle in what you're saying, which is this idea that when you're desperate, people can sense it, and it really turns people off from wanting to buy from you or wanting to use your stuff. And desperation usually comes from this force, mostly in small business, well, really any business, comes from the need to make money and the need to pay your bills. And I forget who we had on, I think it's Matt Holder that called it commission breath. Is the guy who called it commission breath. But they smell it on you, and so your ability to where you went in and you're just go, I just want to be of value to these people. And we're going to touch on some of the things you did, right? But I want to be of value allowed you to start building a real relationship where there wasn't something asking in return. Ricky Carruth, these guys freaking blowing up in real estate right now as a free coach, blowing up, but he coaches his people that exact methodology. When they're calling for sale by owners, it is literally just, how can I help you? It is not, he talks about your goal is not to close a sale on the calls. And what's interesting about it is the freedom. Like, I'm reading his testimonials from his agents, and there's so many testimonials about how you freed me. You freed me from the mindset of when the Zillow lead comes in, I feel so like, I got to close this deal. If I don't close this deal, then it's going to go with somebody else and all this stuff. Instead of just, hey, I just want to help this person.
How can I help you?
Yeah, if I just
But
want to
there's
help this person.
also, if people don't give themselves another avenue of income. Like, I was a financial advisor wearing a suit driving for Uber and digging holes. Like, there's a certain layer of, or there's a certain you got to be humble enough to do that while still be confident in what you're delivering during normal working hours. So if you're only an advisor or only in real estate and that's your only source of revenue, you can't help but have commission breath. And that's like early on in my career, transitioning slightly to some of the relationship stuff. Northwestern, we started with putting together a list of 200 people that you know, which I think is awesome. I think the approach is terrible. So I think that it should be more of an awareness approach and figuring out how you can help them. Hey, what are your goals? What are you trying to, you want to buy a house? Let me introduce you to a realtor.
Yes.
Oh, you want to start a business? Oh, let me introduce you to whoever. Oh, you want a new job? I have a connection with this company over here. Not selling your products and services, and understanding the idea of building relationship equity and relationship capital, and doing so without the expectation of anything in return, fully knowing that over time, you will get something in return. And so what I had done early on in my career is I went and I was trying to shove product down people's throats, and I either wanted to sell them something or have them introduce me to someone so I could sell them something. And it severed a lot of my family and friend relationships to the point where I've spent the last 3 or 4 years calling 2 people every single day just to check in and see how they're doing without an ask at the end whatsoever, because I've needed to rebuild those relationships over time. That's how bad they got.
That's so crazy, man. We heard this great tip, and the name, I'm going to hit myself, Jill?
Jill Addison?
Yes. No, not Jill Addison. It was the other Jill for email marketing, where she told us about asking questions.
Oh, the last name that I butchered, Fanslaw.
Fanslaw. Like, it was a fantastic, though, idea of how do you provide value for people? Well, what questions do they want answered? Like, and someone else did this. Eric, he was a great interview too. Yeah, Eric Fang. He talked about, an easy way to provide value for your audience is, if you're a financial advisor, like, don't give them what you think they want. Ask them what questions they would want answered in their life. What are the questions that they have? And so often we don't approach it from that aspect. And it's just an easy email to send out to your base. It's an easy post to do, an easy thing to say, hey, what questions do you guys have in regards to your expertise? And it helps build the trust, helps get you known. Most importantly, you're providing value because it's just all about them.
But also be willing to add value outside of your expertise and what you're compensated on. So like a lot of the value that I try and provide to the audience is about personal development. It's about forming good habits, right? It's about following through with what you say you're going to do, right? It's not about how to get referrals. and I share that content too. But people need, and when I work with advisors, with their content strategy, they're like, all right, what are the topics that I should discuss? Like the difference between the traditional and the Roth IRA, budgeting, life insurance, whatever the scenario may be. And I'm like, yes, but diversify your content because A, if they're not in the mindset of financial planning, they're going to tune you out, and B, it's hard enough to get their attention once, never mind a second time. You need to diversify your content just to stay relevant. They need to be, back to the mission, they need to be better off having come across you, and maybe they're a future client of yours.
You talk a lot about personal development. I'm just kind of picking up both with where you worked before with some of the younger professionals, but then also yourself. And I don't want to take us too far off topic, but I just kind of want to know what are you doing for what do you recommend for personal development? Is there habits that you've formed?
Yep. I've tried a number of things. The one that's been the stickiest is in Andy Frisella from the MF CEO Project.
That guy will get you motivated.
Yep. Episode 107 about the power list.
Okay.
And I put my own spin on that power list, which basically it's 5 critical tasks that you do on a daily basis, and you don't switch them up unless you're 100% on them for at least a few weeks, right? 21 days. So it's not a to-do list. It's not, I gotta, reach out to this person. Right. It's things that are 100% in your control that are repeatable.
Yes.
Now, I found in my career as an advisor, there were times where I was making a bunch of money, but my personal life was in shambles, and it didn't matter how much money I made. I felt like crap that day.
Right. Yep.
Or there were times when personal life was awesome, but I had no money, so it's tough to have a good day when you have no money. So you just feel off kilter if you're not operating on all cylinders at all times.
Yep.
So of the 5 things, I do 2 things on a daily basis that move me forward personally. As simple as when I first started off, it was waking up at 4:30 and going to the gym. So I was 2 off my list by 6:30. Right? They don't need to be groundbreaking things. It could be eating healthy. It could be listening to a podcast, whatever. 2 things that move your business forward on a daily basis. So whether it's asking for a certain amount of referrals, a certain amount of outreaches. I say outreaches, not dials, because I think that you can reach out to people in multiple different ways. Yeah. Or maybe it's a certain amount of pieces of content that you produce on a daily basis. And then one thing that moves others forward. Whether it's a random act of kindness, connecting 2 people for no financial gain for yourself, but just because you think they would enjoy each other and something would come of it, calling 2 people just to check in. And when people say, well, what do I do on the weekends if I'm not working? Get rid of the work stuff, add something on the personal, add something on the service of others, so that you have a well-rounded day every single day. And what it does is it allows you to create a winning environment for yourself, because whether it's sports programs or companies, we've all, I'm sure, been a part of winning and losing organizations. And our confidence is higher when we're a part of a winning organization. So create your own winning environment.
What if your organization has been winning and then goes to losing and then
I was thinking the same
you have
thing.
to implement the power list.
We've all been a part of that too. We've all been a part of that too.
But
the roller coaster.
It creates momentum, which ultimately allows you to cultivate your own internal motivation as opposed to seeking it from outside sources. So like when you win your power list by 11 o'clock, everything else is icing on the cake, and you're like, well, why would I slow down now? I have all this momentum behind me.
That's so true. There's so much truth in psychology there. Like the more and more I'm reading on this stuff, and this Dr. Joe Dispenza guy and all this. Oh, it's amazing. And it's just the power of being in control. Like so much of our anxiety and everything that comes, it comes from just the feeling of being out of control, which comes from it's like almost like when you give in and don't go to the gym, it's so much easier to not go the next day and the next day. And then all of a sudden you get into a spiral, and it's just like a downward spiral to where all of a sudden you start going, I suck, I'm no good. You start telling yourself all these thoughts, which then affects everything else you do in your life. It's really, really weird how the human mind just can do that to you versus when you're on top. As simple as like, I'm going to get out of bed, like today.
But celebrating that.
Yes.
Over-celebrating that.
Yes, literally just like, I am going to get out of bed when my first alarm goes off. And I did it today, and I was like, oh, thank God. Thank God that it did. But it made me feel so much better. Made me feel so much better about myself, and it's just amazing how that works psychologically. So, I mean, we're talking about mindset now. I know we're going to talk about relationships, but that was
Yeah,
really,
Luke's like,
really
I don't want
good
to talk
stuff.
about mindset anymore. I want to get
Yeah, I want to get
tangible
granular.
things.
No, let's talk about relationships. Let's get deep on relationships. We hear all the time. It's actually really affirmed for me. Our mission in this world and what we do in business, really, it's really affirmed this podcast over the past couple of years being able to do it, because we hear top producer after top producer, coach after coach, business owner after business owner come on, and they all say that they all come back to the same thing. It's about relationships over transactions. To summarize it, as Ricky Carruth would say, it's about providing value, not getting commission breath, all these things. But it's really hard to hear that high-level thing over and over again. And a lot of times we need help translating it down to what does that look like in practicality. I'd just be interested to hear from you, as you've looked back on your couple years here, you've felt like it's paid off for you. What are some of the things you've just done yourself, just in your life? It doesn't have to necessarily apply to everybody who's listening to this, but it can show how it worked for you and paid off in the end, and then we can get into maybe some tactical stuff.
So there's 2 specific examples that are detailed. Don't let me forget the second one, because they're both very detailed. So 2 examples. One is when I was an advisor, and another one is in my consulting company now. So back probably my 3rd year as an advisor out of my 7 years total, there was a badass advisor who raised himself through the ranks in terms of marketplace. He started working with super affluent people, and he had a lower end client when you look at the people who he works with income wise up here, and then him here. Great kid, lower income, and it wasn't, quote, worth that advisor's time to service that person, which on the surface makes sense. So he was like, hey David, why don't you take this and run with it? The financial opportunity from that, and this has sort of 2 wins to it, which is cool, and it's totally outside the scope of like who I market to, which is funny too. So this person, he was in real estate and also a comedian. So basically it was his father's dream to be a comedian. His father passed away, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to fulfill this dream. Right?
That's awesome.
It's badass. He's great too. Justin Hoff. And so I helped him with basic budgeting, no compensation for that, and I sold him a very small disability policy. Basically made like a few $100 in commission.
Okay.
We became boys and went to his comedy shows. He introduced me to this girl, Jess, who is a pharmacist at CVS, and she went to the Mass College of Pharmacy. Jess became a client within a 10-day period because she was flying out to California. That was about a $6,000 commission.
Wow.
And Jess gave me over 40 referrals to pharmacists from the Mass College of Pharmacy, and that resulted in me working in the pharmaceutical space for the rest of my career and speaking at the Mass College of Pharmacy every semester for 2.5 years.
Wow.
Come full circle, Justin called me 2 weeks ago just to check in. He's like, hey, I'm in a little bit of a rut. And I was like, hey, man, I know I could help you. And he's like full-in comedian now, right? And he's out in LA, right, doing this thing. And he's like, and I'm like, I know I can help you. I've had formal relationships with friends in the past where I did not charge them, and it didn't work. It didn't work because you have no skin in the game. So I'm not going to charge you my price here, but I'm still going to charge you right here. So if you're in, I'm in. And that was another nice little pop, right? What's that, 9 or 8 years later? Jeez. 7 years later? And it all started with helping him with budgeting and implementing a small disability policy.
Yep.
But the idea with relationships and building them is it all starts generally, and I just gave you the specifics, but it all starts with actually giving a crap about the person who you're sitting across from.
Yeah, that's a golden
Always be willing. Like, my interaction with him professionally was 35 minutes. And that 35 minutes changed the course of my career.
Do you attribute that to, is that luck? Is it just a matter of
I needed
time?
$300 at that time.
I guess what I'm getting at is like how many, you say you do that once, I guess you're doing one a day to help others. So is that literally like you're helping 365 people A
No,
year?
Whatever 365 is times 2.
Whatever time. Oh.
There's 2 people a day.
Oh, 2 people a day.
But it's also more than just that. It's a mindset, meaning like it's a mindset of, you know, I'm in this world to actually care about what this person needs, and that's a really hard mind. Like, did you wake up today to come into your work today and go, I'm here to care about what Ariel needs, what Andrea needs, what Eli needs, right? Like it's a shift in mindset, and it's not, none of us are evil or wrong not doing that.
Right.
It's just
It's how
the
many of us do it.
reality is
Right.
most of the time we wake up and we go,
What do I need?
what do I need?
Yeah.
Like what do I need to
What am
get
I
my
doing today?
what am I doing
What do I have
today?
for lunch?
How am I going to be successful?
Right.
How do I accomplish my goals versus the outward? And the reason why is because it's like, if you think of it in nature, man, you got to eat, you got to pay your bills, you got to like, and so you're constantly trying to take care of yourself.
Yep.
And it's almost like you're denying yourself to actually fulfill yourself long term in the end. It's a weird.
Yeah.
Making money is really, really cool, but psychological income is what fires me up. Like knowing that.
I would make the argument it's what fires almost everyone up.
Yeah.
I have not met yet, knock on wood, because we have wood in the studio
walnut.
now.
There you go.
Now, I could be wrong,
knock
so
on
any
it?
rich person that wants to call in and you know.
The lines are open.
The lines are open. I've not met, and I've met now a lot of multimillionaires over my career now here at ReminderMedia, a lot of really rich people. And their money does not make them happy. Like, that's the cliche, but it's wild when you see it play out for real. You hear it. You hear it from your parents. You hear it from your grandparents. But, whew, it's weird when you actually see it.
But
You're like,
to see a year's worth of connecting people and helping people, and to see like, so I market to advise. That's where I spend my marketing efforts. But I work with realtors, loan officers, accountants, now a comedian, right? Loan officers, because they'll come to me through social, right? So to know that I made an introduction to, you know, my boy who's also a client, who's an advisor, to my loan officer client and friend, to my accountant, you know, client and friend, to my attorney client and friend, and now they have sort of a B&I sort of dream team to where they have their group, and they all are sending business back together, and I'm the reason.
That's awesome.
Why they're having an additional impact on their lives and their clients' lives and their families' lives. That feels really good. That feels really good. And over time,
it pays
what do you think
dividends.
they do?
Yeah, it pays dividends.
They're like, oh, well, David helped me. How can I help David?
And I want to point out, too, that story you just told, and then we'll get into your second story. It
I
was...
already forgot about that.
Yeah. It was a person you helped that referred you that you got an account off of. But then that referral turned into referrals. Like
40.
People don't think past when they hear referral
whole new
business,
industry,
they
right?
think, oh yeah, a referral. I get a referral from my client. They don't think referral of referral of referral of referral. And it is crazy what a client is worth to you if you just think about it that way. Like, this is not just one referral. This is a referral of a referral of. So one client I sell David, he might refer me to Andrea, but Andrea might refer me to Josh, and Josh might refer me to Ariel. So my relationship with David was actually worth 3 referrals already, and people don't tend to think about it that way in their
And that's
business.
just
but
in a
they
2-year
should.
period, never mind a lifetime.
Yeah, but they should.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget what the stat is. I want to say it was like 11 to 15. You look up Ricky Cruz's stat of like one client in real estate will be, if you nurture and build a relationship, will be worth like 11 to 15 transactions over the course of your relationship with them. It was a crazy stat he put out. I was like, wow, that's crazy. But also, I put a stat on my Instagram the other day. Salespeople, and listen up, all my salespeople, listen to this. Salespeople who actively seek referrals make 4 to 5 times more. 4 to 5 times more. How do you actively seek referrals? It's not just about, Josh, do you have a referral for me? No, you actively seek referrals
But
by
that's
putting into practice.
that's step one.
But you have to do that. But putting into practice what we're talking about here. If you don't base your foundation of your business off of this principle that you were talking about, you're not going to end up getting referrals when you ask. The concept of our magazine, this is what people don't understand when they're doing our magazine. A lot of times we have to coach them on it. The concept of the magazine is that you are giving value to a person and you're training them psychologically as they get the magazine every 2 months as a gift. It's just all about them. It's about their enjoyment, their entertainment. But you would use it as the tool to train them that, hey, if you want to reciprocate back to me, you can reciprocate in the way of a referral. And we see, 38% are getting referrals from doing that type of methodology. But it starts on this foundation of what you're talking about, which is it's about just, hey, how can I help you? How can I give you something that's a benefit to you with nothing in return?
Quick sidebar on referrals, because I think this is very tactical for any sales professional. In every single interaction that you have with someone, you can bring up referrals.
I love that.
You do it in one of three ways. Number one is you tee it up for next time. Hey, part of expectations are that as you walk through your life, you're going to need a loan officer, you're going to need an advisor, you're going to need a whoever. I've spent a number of years developing those relationships. I would expect that you come and ask me for an introduction, and I'm more than happy to do that.
That's great.
Okay, and I would expect that to be a bilateral relationship. There may be some times that you come across someone, or I see that you're connected with someone on LinkedIn or wherever, and I may ask you about them, right? Is that cool, right? And they say yes. So that's bringing up, number one is teeing it up. Number two is actually asking. And number three is updating and thanking.
That's the training part.
It's so frustrating to me when I give someone a referral and I don't know what happened to it. Like, I want to know, did you get in touch with them? Because if not, I will call them and make them talk to you. Did you sell them? Did you impact their life? And I don't do it for a thank you, but a thank you feels really good. Like, you have to allow this to come full circle for them. Otherwise, they feel empty every time they give you an introduction because they have no idea what happens to it.
Yeah.
So in terms of referrals, tee it up, ask, update, and thank.
Dude, that is great. That's a golden nugget right there.
What if no one, I don't know, say like takes, you said, how can I help, right? What if no one takes you up on
It doesn't
on that
matter.
offer,
It's the
or how do you-
gesture.
Yeah.
It's the gesture.
Is there anything that you do to kind of give them an idea of how you can help, though? Like, I'm thinking, I know because we've talked about it before. It's like, I can't remember who was on the podcast that said it, but they said, don't ask if I can help you. Let them know how you can help them and see if they respond. Like,
So you can give them examples, like
Yeah.
I just did in terms of buying a house, or or needing a job, or wanting a job, or wanting a relationship for all that. You know what I mean? And then you need to do a good job with your social listening. So when you see that they're seeking an opportunity on
Great
LinkedIn,
point, yeah.
when you see that they're looking to move locations, then you have to go and be proactive and say, hey, I saw this. I can introduce you to someone,
Yeah.
and I would love to make that introduction. Are you open? Like, you need to
That's a
go
great
out of
point.
your way to give referrals. Don't wait for them to ask for referrals.
We never really focused on the spin of giving referrals.
right.
And I think that is a great tactic. Great. I'm surprised we've never really talked about that very much.
We'll talk about this at dinner, but I gave Andrew 3 badass referrals, and I'm expecting
Nice.
some in return.
Andrew, everybody listening, is our head of business development here, so that is an awesome sign. I love that. Okay, let's get into the second story.
So second story, I went to a high school, all boys Catholic school in Danvers, St. John's Prep. It's like a brotherhood. It doesn't matter what year you are there, you help each other out when you run into each other in the business world. So the gentleman by the name of Pete, played baseball with him. Loose friends in high school. Didn't really stay in a ton of contact through college, went our separate ways, but always knew what each other was up to via social media.
Sure.
He is a wholesaler at John Hancock. Obviously, a wholesaler's audience is advisors.
Right.
So started to chat with him again and build the relationship, share him the vision of what I was building. And this was before I even started the company, just when I was thinking about it. And he's like, I love the idea, man. Like, let's continue to chat, continue to chat, continue to chat. And he's one of John Hancock's top wholesalers. So he has a lot of sway and say within the organization. So his territory is out in Nebraska, and he organized an event with about 70 advisors. About $6 billion in AUM was in the room. It was like a legit crew. And it was funny. He organized that talk. I was the keynote. And in watching the raw video, it was a great learning experience for me for needing to improve on speaking. Although it was still good, but it was a learning experience. But I spent $2,500 to get there with flight, renting a car, hotel, all that type of stuff. $2,500 on a videographer to video everything and then splice everything up. So $5,000 all in. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna get so many clients.
It's going to rock.
So this was back in, I think,
We've been there
February.
before.
Yeah, I think it was back in February. So obviously, like, I talked it up in advance. I was, friends and family was like, oh, I'm going to Nebraska. There's going to be so many advisors there. We got a videographer, And so as a result, everyone was like, oh, so how was it? How was it? I'm like, oh, it was great. Oh, it was great. Oh, it was great. But, nothing was coming of it.
Sure.
I met this gentleman, Landon. Landon works for an RIA out there, but he was a former Northwestern guy. And Landon and I just connected well because he's like the man, first off. But second, we had that Northwestern background.
Yeah.
Now, Landon had just built this big, beautiful house on a lake in Nebraska, moved in, and shortly thereafter it flooded. He had to redo the whole first floor. So he had capital to be able to hire me, but bandwidth-wise, he wasn't going to be able to take it seriously, which I appreciated that transparency, and we said, let's work together in 2020. But throughout the interim, I maintained connection with him. Randomly, I would say, hey, man, it's been a while. Let's schedule some time together, toss him my calendar link, and I'd spend an hour with him and just share ideas, pro bono, share ideas, right? And finally, he was like, hey, you got to talk to this guy, Dan. Right? He made an introduction to Dan, and this was 3 months ago. So Dan's 44 years old right now. He has a psychology background. When he was 28, he sold his first business for like $10 million.
Jeez.
He then got into consulting in the financial services industry, and what he did was he interviewed a bunch of consumers and a bunch of advisors to determine from a psychology standpoint why people give or don't give referrals and why people ask or don't ask for referrals. And he speaks on the main stage of TD Ameritrade and companies of the like. This is one of the introductions, by the way.
Right, we got to get him on the podcast. Dan, we're coming for you.
He's unbelievable. And so he also bought an insurance brokerage company, and within 3 years tripled their revenue, or quadrupled their revenue. And they weren't a small shop. They were already doing multi-millions of dollars, but that was simply based on his influence in the industry. So as a result of spending $5,000 in Nebraska, to doing pro bono work with Landon, to getting introduced to Dan, 3 results are coming from it. Number 1 is Dan hired me as his consultant to help him with his marketing efforts, which, based on everything I just shared with you, is a huge win and ego boost for me that someone like that would hire me. Number 2 is he has no interest in retaining relationships with his consulting business and speaking business, but him and I have similar methodology. So we're trying to work out a deal to where I can fulfill all that for him, and my team can fulfill all that for him. And this is the wildest thing. At the beginning of the year, I said, based on the audience of advisors that I'm building and my background in the insurance space, I would love to have an insurance brokerage firm, like an FAA brokerage company, whatever it's going to be called. And come to find out with Dan, I can white label his services and leverage his team of 30 or 40 staff members to pump all the business through that, and that's going to be live in 2020.
Man, that is
and that's
else.
Just focusing on giving a crap about people, spending time with someone that's not compensating you, to now changing the course of my business.
And the key point there would be, you started the story like you want to earn Landon, right?
Yeah.
Landon's business. But you just focused on providing value for Landon. And I don't know if you work with him yet or not work with him.
Not formally yet. We're starting
right?
in 2020.
But he refers you to this. And it's just, that's how these things work. And I just want to point that out to everybody, is that the problem with relationship marketing is it's not instant gratification. And a lot of times it is not normally, the person you have the relationship with a lot of times doesn't end up being the person you do business with. But they end up, but they end up connecting you to the business that you need. They end up, putting you in a network of people that ends up getting you that business. And that's a hard thing for business owners, especially salespeople or sales-driven businesses, to stay the course on. And where I think people die, and I'm curious on your opinion on this, but I think where people die is because relationship marketing is a long-term game. It's inherently in the word relationship, it's going to be a long-term thing. And most people, because they don't get instant gratification, they stop. And so they end up seeing no result. They would have been better off doing the cold, just pound, if you're not going to stay the course on the relationship side. And it's just really, that's where people die.
You have to do both.
100% have to feed the funnel.
You need a You need to go after your easy singles and doubles, put your sales hat on for a little bit, but you need to recognize that every client or every person that you come across, whether they're a client or not, you're simply building equity in your network.
Correct.
And you don't know, like if you're a venture capitalist and you have a bunch of equity and a bunch of different, you don't know which one's going to pop, but one of them's going to pop.
What's what they say? Grant Cardone says all the time. You never go backwards.
Every person's like a lottery ticket.
You always go forward.
You don't know which one you're going to scratch, and it's going to change.
It goes
your life,
from unknown
does.
to a no or a yes, and so it's a positive. You know where you stand, and so it's never a negative.
Have you been able to incorporate this stuff like into your coaching model? Like, have you figured out how to systematize it for others? You do it so organically.
So yes,
obviously,
but yes, it's difficult in the sense that they have me saying one thing to them, and they have their firm saying another thing.
Gotcha.
So like a lot of firms have like activity metrics and points per meeting, and there's no point
Those
for
KPIs.
hey, I had a really good conversation. Well, what came from it? Well, nothing yet. So yes. So I help advisors, when they market, they need to speak to a specific group of people. So like for me, I speak to financial advisors. So they need to speak to business owners. They need to speak to doctors or dentists or engineers or salespeople. They need to pick a particular person with their digital strategy.
On LinkedIn, they're going out and finding these people.
Yes,
Okay.
because in person, right, like my buddy who's a comedian, well, I can work with a comedian. I'm not going to change my LinkedIn profile to say I work with comedians.
Right.
My point is you can be malleable in your conversations with people.
Right.
You can't change your profile every time you get a new connection.
Right.
So when you're marketing yourself online, it's beneficial to pick a particular niche, and then you need to be different and unique. So if everyone's sending copy and paste spammy messages on LinkedIn, don't do that, right? Instead, use a service like Loom, right?
Yeah, right.
Do a personal video. Hey, Luke. I know, in the text, portion, it's, hey, Luke, thanks for accepting the connection request. I know LinkedIn's been noisy lately. I shot this quick video for you as a means of introduction. In the video,
great.
hey, Luke,
That's
I
great.
see that you've been an
really
advisor for 7 years over at XYZ firm. I actually do a ton of work over there. Thanks so much for accepting the connection request. I'm very big on building relationships and tell them what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like I'm very big on building relationships and being different and unique. I would love to hop on a quick 15-minute intro call, learn more about your initiatives rounding out this year and heading into 2020, and see how we may be of service to one another at some point along the way. If you are open to it, below this video is a link to my calendar for a quick 15-minute call. Simply click on that, find a time that works for you, and I'll look forward to chatting with you then. If now's not the right time, no worries. My content's going to nurture you over time. Just tell them exactly what you're going to do. So you need to be
That's
different
another
on the
great
front
sales
end.
principle.
You need to be tell them what them what to expect.
Set the intention.
Yeah.
Set the intention.
And then, so you got to be different on the front end.
Yep.
You nurture them along the way. You engage with them on social. You find them on other platforms, and eventually, they're yours.
Because
Try
the
and cut
worst
the
thing
noise.
about the LinkedIn messages is they want to sell you something.
Yeah.
But
They
don't-
know
right.
you know they want something from you, and they don't say that in the LinkedIn.
No,
and
it's
just
always
like,
you have 15 minutes to connect.
Yes.
No.
It's like
No.
about what?
About what?
So it's funny. Whenever I get those, I'm a little snarky, but I end it nicely. I'm like, hey, like I got a message one time that was something along the lines of, hey, I got a quick question for you. When you get a chance, message me. And I was like, hey, what's up? And then it was a copy and pasted, sales script. And I was like, how effective is this strategy for you? And they go, very effective. I go, I'm calling BS. Are you open to some feedback? And they said, yeah, what do you got? And then I actually gave them thoughtful feedback. I told them exactly what I just told you, and they were like, I actually really appreciate that. I thought you were being the jerk at first. And I was like, I was, to catch your attention.
Yeah. That's another great sales principle. That's so good.
So is this something, I guess, I'm asking almost for myself because I'm an introvert. You seem, I don't want to mislabel you, but you seem like an extrovert, right? You seem like someone who's naturally...
In conversations like these, you put me in a room of 100 people,
Right.
I need to be introduced. Like, you need to introduce me.
But
to
you're
people.
also a super
Gotcha.
creative guy. So is this something that can be learned? Is it just something that you've done organically? Do you have a checklist that you give people? Like you're able to kind of spit out that script, spit out that video on the fly.
Yeah.
How do you learn or acquire the
I've
skills?
done thousands of those videos.
Right. You just
And I tripped
do
over the
'em.
first handful. But to be quite frank with everyone listening, people pay me to help them based on books I read and podcasts I listen to.
Your knowledge.
I'm just doing the upfront heavy lifting, and I'm the spark notes for them.
Nice.
So if they don't have if I'm always willing to invest 15 minutes with someone, like I just messaged back and forth with a girl on LinkedIn who's thinking about getting in the financial services industry. I was like, here's my link. I'm happy to chat, right? And I'm going to say, hey, listen to this podcast, read this book, right? Do this, do that. Oh, and by the way, I got a training course for you, free of cost, which, by the way, no one takes me up on that offer, and then they end up paying me for the information that's in there. So go sign up for the course.
That's so nuts, man.
It's insane. So my point is I've just learned it. So like when I got the confidence to actually start this business and leave what I had done for 7 years, is I read Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crushing It. I read his other 3 or 4 books within like 2 weeks, and I was like, all right, I'm out. I'm starting my business. And then I sold that for my first 6 to 12 months, and then as I've...
What you learned in Gary V's books and
That's it.
stuff. Yeah.
And that cost me $60 to get those books. And then, it created a multi-6-figure business in a year and a half.
Well, you sold that and your experience.
Yeah.
Which
and I
is who
was
you are.
Confident.
Yep.
And I,
Well, there's
led with all the good information and then asked.
key point here. One of the hardest parts in the journey of real estate agents, financial advisors, call it the roller coaster. We see the meme all the time on Instagram where it's like the ups and downs. I'm going to make it. No, I'm failed. I'm suck at this. I'm going to make it, right? And it's literally just like Steven, my brother, talks about it all the time. He goes, one of the hardest things in the first year in the business was just having the confidence to tell people, I know what I'm doing. And that's a really hard thing to do, but that's what it is. Don't be ashamed of going, hey, I have read these books. You're paying me because I've read these books, I can summarize them for you. I think that is a great thing. It builds trust. It makes me trust you more.
And if
you're right.
Right.
And if you need a confidence boost, so that, because I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, and one of my friends, and he'll know who it is if he listens to this, he was like, no offense, but what value do you add to a 52-year-old who's making a couple $1 million? And I was like, oh, I don't know, but I got a lot of them paying me. But in all honesty, when you, if you're feeling that imposter syndrome, don't go out and sell stuff. Go and help people for free and let them respond to you saying, "Wow, that's awesome."
That might be be
cool.
the best point of this whole podcast. I love that. The imposter syndrome. We've all felt it. Go out and help people. I love that, dude. That is awesome. Go out and help people for free. It will build your confidence, build your credibility. Yeah, I love that. It's amazing. All right, so we could go all day. I just realized I looked at the clock. Geez, we got to wrap this up. But let me ask you this question because I'm curious what your, advice would be. Is, what would you go back and tell your younger self? Knowing what you know now, looking back on your journey, you're obviously successful now. What advice would you give younger David?
Can I give 2?
No, I'm just kidding. Of course you can.
So number 1 is actually go out of your way to learn new stuff, both in and out of your industry.
Okay.
If I read all the financial advisor marketing books, I'd be stuck in the 80s.
Yeah, that's such a great point.
Go read other stuff. Go listen to other stuff and figure out how you can take those ideas from other industries that may be ahead of yours and bring them in and be that first person to bring it in.
That's great.
That would be number 1. Number 2 is don't write people off. Always be open to having a 15-minute conversation because you never, ever, ever, ever know where that's going to go. And and I'll show you my calendar, I keep 50, 60 appointments a week.
I see your post on Instagram.
Yep.
It's insane.
And I still invest 15 minutes with someone. And if I'm too busy one week, it's like, great, talk to me at 5 in the morning. Talk to me at 8 o'clock at night. And those small gestures, when they see that someone has their stuff together but is still willing to invest that time with them, that goes a very, 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 very long way. And 6 months, 18 months, 5 years from now, that's going to come back to you.
That's awesome, man.
That's
Awesome.
amazing, man. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
I
for
feel like you
flying
blew your
here.
first interview out of the water. Like, I think the second interview, you just blew it
I
out
was
of the water.
just started in business. I didn't
That's
know
what it
I didn't know
was.
what
You
I
were a
doing.
young gun at that time. Yeah.
You gotta if you haven't listened to the first episode or seen the YouTube video, go back, check that out. It's at staypaidpodcast.com. Yeah, you can definitely feel, and not to say anything about a year ago, but you could feel you were kind of giving theories almost a year ago. Like you're giving experiences now.
It's
You've
amazing.
been through.
And you guys
seen
are
some
great
results.
hosts and bring it out of me in person. So thank both of you.
Yeah, it's
Dude,
awesome.
in-person interviews are so much easier than these Skype interviews. We got to do more of this.
Yeah.
Fly all of our guests
fly
in.
them all in.
Ariel's giving us a thumbs up because she has to deal with the connection
the
issues.
mics. Oh man.
Before we close, let people know how they follow you, how to check you out on social media, what your website is.
Yep. So website is thefaa.co. So thefaa.co. Instagram at David_DeCelle, DeCelle. LinkedIn, David DeCelle. Facebook, David DeCelle. My name's the same on all those platforms.
I like you snatching up that 3-letter domain there for the .co.
Yeah.
FAA.co. Nice.
Thefaa.co. So 6-letter, but
Messed it up.
it's all good.
All right.
It's all good.
That's pretty good, though. And thank you so much for listening. To dive deeper into this episode, to get all the resources and links we mentioned, I said it already, but go over to staypaidpodcast.com. We'll have show notes. We'll have all the links that David talked about there. We won't mess them up and write FFA.co. We'll write thefaa.co in the show notes. While there, you can also find the videos for all of our episodes. And if you're interested in supporting the show, there are 2 ways that we ask you to do that. The first one, head on over to iTunes, give this show 5 stars and leave a comment. That helps move us up the charts. We were at like number 50 on the iTunes charts for marketing podcasts.
And here's the thing.
Damn.
We need reviews so more people can see it.
That's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying.
we love the reviews that make us blush.
Well, it doesn't
but
just-
it really helps
people see it.
the algorithm of people seeing it, whatever that magical stuff is happening in the background. So if you can get your friends and family to review it, the main purpose and reason is because we know more people will see it.
Yeah.
So please do that for
But
us.
the best way is to tell a friend about us and share on social media. Look, we talk about building relationships today. So you have a list of people that you need to reach out and talk to, right?
So
what can you do?
to
What can you
reiterate
say?
what we said earlier today,
Bring it home.
If you don't want to feel as if you're selling someone, listen to this podcast, and if you truly get value from it, hit up one of your colleagues, hit up one of your referral partners, and just say, hey, I was thinking about you during this podcast. I think you'd really enjoy it.
Love that.
And you're giving them value without asking for
Josh
anything
is
in
pulling
return.
out his
Steve.
money to give to you.
I want to be cash in here.
Uh-oh. Josh carries no cash. You got Venmo? No. No, it's so good.
Thank you. And if you'd like to get hold of me or Luke, you can email us at podcast@remindermedia.com or find us on Instagram. We are at Stay Paid Podcast. Also, head over and check out Luke's Instagram. He's at Luke Acree.
Yes. Check
Making
it out.
moves.
I'll answer your questions too. I've had a lot of clients and a lot of listeners reach out. I mean, I had somebody reach out just last week about where we get the data from for absentee owners and stuff. So any strategies, things you're trying to implement, want to make sure you guys get the details that you need to actually take action, because that's the reason why we're doing this podcast.
Absolutely. For this episode, I'm Joshua Stike. This
And
is
I'm
David DeCelle.
Yeah, David
That's
DeCelle and Luke Acree. And here's your action item. I've never really looked at it from this spin, but I really love it. Is the spin of what referrals can you give this week? I love that as an action item. Like, after this podcast, ask yourself who in your sphere, who in your relationships can you give referrals to? And actively seek out giving them a referral this week. And I love that concept because you're giving, and at the same time, you're setting it up to where it's very easy for you to then go, hey, I would expect the same, right? And so remember, difference between a top producer and mediocre producer in every industry. I mean, we have worked in over 140 industries for Reminder Media alone. 140 different industries have used our products, and every industry
It's
we
over
work in.
160 now.
Really?
Just an
See?
update. Yep.
160. I'm way behind the
Comedians?
times.
Comedians.
Do we
no
have a
comedians
comedian?
yet,
Your friend's going to be your
but I
first
did write
comedian.
down Jeff's name, yeah.
Difference is top producers take action, so take action on that today.